Welcome to season two of Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. Laurel, I'm so glad to have you back with me and begin a new season together.
Can you believe a second season? And here we are,
I
ready to
know,
go.
ready to go. A year later, and we spent a whole year easily talking about awakening to the beautiful work. And I'm really excited to really speak into this new season of living in the beautiful work because I feel like that's where we are. Don't you feel like we're living the beautiful work and we have been for a while? And so to, welcome our friends back and to welcome new listeners and to really dig into the life of living in the beautiful work. I'm very, very excited to talk and share this season.
I am too. And one of the things that I keep thinking about often when we think about learning something, getting stuck in the learning and not the living of what we've learned.
Yeah.
So I love this place that we're at where we can continue to learn, but we really are living into what the
Yeah.
work that we are doing to
Yeah.
make our lives beautiful.
I know. And I know, for me, when I've thought about this season and thought about my journey and the experience of living in the beautiful work now for many years, it's it's a reminder that we're always learning and growing, but we come through times where we're really integrating our work and it doesn't feel like we're growing or learning anything new, or we kind of feel maxed out, or we might be releasing so much or going through some grief, which we're going to be talking about into the season. And it may really feel like sometimes we're taking two steps forward to take one step back and whatever that saying is, right? Two steps back, one step forward. And that's okay. Like we understand that there's a rhythm to the experience that is just perfect for wherever we're at. Yeah.
So true. Could be a sidestep. Who knows?
Right.
As long as
Right.
there's a little bit of movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a feeling of, I don't know. I guess when I feel like when I've been in intervention periods where there hasn't been a lot of movement, I felt like I have been, I don't know, deepening or relaxing into myself or coming to like a new understanding of myself and feeling I think more empowered really ultimately during that time, even though I may not be zooming along with something new. I still feel like I'm strengthening myself and I'm doing the work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and when I think about movement, whether it's side forward or backward, it really isn't progress. That's not what I mean. It's just that when we're fully alive, right, we're ever changing and we're ever being without us forcing it. It's just that there is movement associated with our life
Yeah.
because we're a living being.
Yeah. Yeah. And the work shows up, I think, for us when we're really living into the work and we've already awakened and we know, hey, we're here on this journey and we're going to be doing the beautiful work and we're going to really keep making our life, more of what we want and expanding ourselves and living into our full potential. It's like, it's like we don't have to force anything anymore, and we don't have to worry about how the work's going to be showing up, or we don't have to go wondering what's next. It just comes. It just, like the people show up, the issues arise naturally, right? And we go, oh, wait a minute, opportunity, opportunity for growth.
Now, for a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe you were speaking directly to me in my overthinking. Like this is what I was hearing. We don't need to overthink the work
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're living the work, right?
yeah,
We can
yeah,
just we can just know that the work that we have done, the work that we'll continue to do, it shows up in just who we are. No need to
yeah.
overthink it.
No, and no need to force it. No need to force it, and no need to worry about it anymore. Like worrying, right? Worrying can just be taken right off the table. It's like, oh, if there's work to be done, believe me, it will arise, it will show up. And I think the saying that kind of speaks into what we're talking about today is a saying that I used a lot with one client, and she actually sent me a stone that had it etched into it. And we said it all the time, which was trust the process. That after you live in the beautiful work for long enough, you just relax and surrender to the experience, and you trust that whatever is meant to come up and whatever work is needs to happen next will arise and show itself to you, right? Reveal itself, so to speak.
That is beautiful. Beautiful. Reminds me of one of my favorite sayings: when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes, yes. And don't we know now, when you're living in the beautiful work, that sometimes our teachers are the people that we have the hardest time with?
Tell me more about that.
I feel like, when I have been struggling the most in relationships, and I've been willing to um, look at myself really closely in the proverbial mirror. My proverbial mirror is my meditation cushion, where I'm sitting and I'm reflecting and saying, hmm, what's my part in this? Or how do I maybe show up like that sometimes? And I just don't want to look at it, right? That those relationships are often the places where it's my shadow work, which we're also going to be speaking into this season as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the parts of ourselves that we don't really want to look at, or we try not to even have, and then they show up in somebody else and we don't like them. We judge them, we criticize it, and yet we have it too, and we just don't really like to look at it that way. Yeah, yeah. But they're our greatest teachers. I know for me, it's been some of my biggest opportunity to learn how to release judgment, to um, to own the parts of myself that aren't my favorite parts, but they're there, and I'm okay now. That they're there. I've learned how to hopefully work with them more consciously, so that I maybe soften them a little bit, or don't judge myself for it quite so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a great experience with that teaching years ago with an energy practitioner. I had gone to a one-day workshop, and it was part of the workshop was about forgiving those people who maybe you felt had infringed or harmed you in some way, and working through what they did and how it made you feel. And the third step was the hardest. And when you had done that previously in your life to someone else,
Yeah.
and that was the piece, you talk about the shadow side, right? It was, holding someone to some unforgivable standard that I have been known to do before. So it was so interesting. And the self forgiveness, the self compassion, the forgiveness of others, it's all in those little messages that come through the shadow side.
I
Can't wait to talk to you
know.
about that juicy topic.
I know. And I love the idea that you've brought up early on too. And this is another topic that I'm sure we'll speak into. If it's not on our list, make sure it gets on our list, is the really living into self-compassion piece. Because when we are doing the beautiful work, and when we're willing to surrender into all the big work that possibly could be there for us, we keep requiring higher and higher levels of self-compassion, because it truly is, if we're going to look at our shadow self, if we're going to do the self-forgiveness on on the levels that we really can do to really clear and free ourselves to to I think become as powerful as we can be, and use our voices greatly as we can, then we need a lot of self-compassion, and we can grow that. We can do that work. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
surrendering and being willing to do the work. I know, kind of tied to my overthinking is my plan on the work that I need to do. that I set out to do. And then all of a sudden something will come up and I'll realize, oh, yeah, my greatest lesson at this time is not the lesson plan I had put in place. Obviously, the universe has a different lesson plan for me, and
Yeah.
perhaps I should lean into that. So that's
Wow.
part of the self-compassion too that I try to practice is, you know, what am I driving? What am I surrendering to? Like
Mm.
where's my ability to just be open and do the work as the work comes up to do?
Yeah, yeah. And the big work, when we're living spiritually, to me, the big work when we're living spiritually is to align our will with the will of the divine, very much third chakra all the way up. But we got to be grounded to do that. So it's all the chakras, right? But that surrender and alignment is um, is so integrated with our ability to touch into our intuition, to live in heart space, to hear, to receive messages, then to trust, to take steps forward, to be willing to fall, all the things. And so, yeah, yeah, big, 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 beautiful work. Mm.
And I love that you brought up, when we're living spiritually, because I'm going to admit that so many times life has its way of, you know, be life happens in a certain way that I'm not necessarily focused on. Am I living my best spiritual life? Right? I Some days I'm just surviving. Am I living into my life? And often my drivers are ease and flow. But as you were speaking about the spiritual piece of receiving and surrendering, and it's the same thing that I'm seeking in having a life of ease and flow, even though I hadn't given it the name of, living spiritually, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I love that, to think about our life being, whether it's our spiritual life, our emotional life, our physical life, right? Our life in relationship to others. It's one. It's what benefits one benefits the
Benefits all.
entire thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so sometimes, to break it down into those sections helps us to maybe be able to see what it is that we're supposed to be waking up to, or what is the next piece of the work, right? So when we have, that's one of the reasons that I always go back in my life to Louise Hay's book, that you can heal your life, and that chart in the back that gives the physical ailment, the emotional component, the mental affirmation, right? It has those pieces of the puzzle, so that if you're feeling out of sorts, physically, or you're feeling out of sorts emotionally, or you're feeling like mentally, anxiety wise, whatever it is, right? Like, these are the ways that we can begin to identify that there's some beautiful work to be done, and it's opportunity, right? For growth and for expansion and for, I don't know, whatever the next level or next experience might be for us. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that you brought up that book again. I know we've talked about it in an episode or two last season, but let's make sure to put that in the show notes. I think
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
really good reference book for our listeners.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ooh, it's so beautiful. I want to, let's just mention that book, just in case any of our listeners do go ahead and get that book and they're looking at that chart, because the chart is so profound and potent, and it's in what Louise did, and how she simplified kind of the a bigger picture, uh, mind body integration experience, right? So she has a physical ailment that you might be experiencing, and then a corresponding emotional, underlying condition that probably has been there for a while. And then on the mental component is actually an affirmation that you would say. And once you were in alignment with that affirmation, you would be correcting the imbalance in the emotional state and the physical state. So that's the healing, the mind body healing component. And how profound that relationship with those three can be. And then her ability to have, crafted that chart. And everybody that I use it with, for myself, I don't know anyone that has ever been with me and we haven't used that chart and it hasn't felt like, bingo, bingo, that's me. Yeah. Very, very cool. So
don't you love when those light bulb moments happen just from
yeah, something simple but
unexpected
potent.
reference? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I've always loved about group work too, is somebody can say one line of their truthful experience, and it can cut away to a truth that's in us that we felt is so real, but maybe couldn't have gotten to on our own. And uh, oh man, that's so powerful to be in that space and hear that, isn't it?
It really is. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's so easy, to see and hear and learn when it's not you, that you're trying to figure it out, right? That you just witness someone else's experience and all of a sudden the light bulb moment.
Yeah, happens. So, and certainly we hope that on the podcast, some of what we're sharing are little moments of awakening or awareness for our listeners to help them, uncover their own work and begin to make steps forward in their own beautiful journey.
Yeah, one of my wishes for this season for us is to maybe invoke curiosity in our listeners, right? What can we dive deeper into? What can we learn just because we're curious?
Yeah. And I think for me, I want to invite our listeners this season to open their curiosity around maybe the bigger picture of what they're here to do that they haven't acknowledged yet. Because I think that, I think for me, the past year, when I reflected on the past year, and I'm just about to self-publish my first book of poetry, my my if I go back, to 2 years ago, and not really that many years ago, I would never have thought that I would have published a book of poetry, right? And it's my favorite book to date. And so I think that this is the journey of the beautiful work, is when we start on this path and we're doing our work, like we don't even know yet what all the gifts are that we could possibly have to offer the world, where our voice might be put to use that hasn't yet, or what we might suddenly have a desire to be a part of or to do, that comes from the clearing. Really, I think it's the clearing of the beautiful work, as we clear the clutter from inside, the conditioning, the self-limiting behaviors, thinking, beliefs, possibilities open up that we never would have guessed could even happen. So we invite our listeners to be really curious this season with us and wonder, like, what's out there for you? What's out there for you that you haven't uncovered yet? We are dying to know.
So much to love about that. I'm going to say that, when the word that was coming to mind as you were saying was ego. Imagine who we could be if we're just open to what's coming rather than what we are driving, right?
Yeah. And what's been, a lot of times we get so stuck in the past and what's already happened, or what we think has limited us because we've already had that experience, or our life has been limited in a certain way, when the possibilities are truly limitless if we let ourselves believe that.
Right. Oh boy. We're in for a great season.
We are in for a great season. So I hope we've whet everybody's appetite to stay with us and to come back and send in questions, send in topics. We've got a whole bunch of topics that we're ready to explore with you, but we'd love to have more, and we'd love to know what you want to hear about. Any other messages to our listeners, Laurel, before we tap off for today and come back and start digging in.
Well, I want to invite them to join us in our Facebook group.
Mm.
You know, our
Mm.
Facebook group has just grown into a great place of conversation and exchanging ideas and happenings and
Yeah,
lessons. And so that's
yeah,
a great place to share with us,
absolutely.
and to share how the work that each one of you is doing shows up in your life, and how it's changed your life. Can't wait
Yeah,
to meet you
yeah.
in that group.
I can't wait to. And I would say too, for our listeners to, be on the lookout as we go through the season. We'll refer back to past season shows that may help fill out the show of the day, so to speak. So I know we've touched on grief before. We've touched on so many different topics: codependency and boundaries and tapping, and oh gosh, we've just talked about so much. And so if there's a show that we've already kind of explored some of the material, we'll refer back to it. So look in the show notes for a more extensive talk on the topic, wherever the topic is. And again, send in your ideas. We'd love to hear from you. We're here to share with you and be with you and grow with you. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. So Laurel, off we go for today. But I'll see you real soon for our next episode of season 2 of Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life.
As always, it's great to be here with you, Laurel.
Great to
Bye
be
for
back.
now.
Bye for now.